Hey everybody, Scoutcrafter here again. Another hazy, hot and humid weekend ahead, and we got a good project that I've been waiting to do, and let's get started downstairs. Today's video is one of my love-hate relationships with the Humble file. Now, I can talk about files for an hour and a half and not even begin to touch, but today we're going to focus on the file handle, and especially like one of my buddies, the Metal Butcher, pointed out. He really liked this type, so let's go talk about the antique file handle. Now, I've been working with files since I'm about 12 years old because they always said, give the chooch a file before he learns to use any mechanical or machine. So you had to learn your way with this and before you can move on. And the first thing you notice as a youngster is you could say, why do files have these why don't they have a handle? And you ask one of the adults, you say, how come the file? And they say, well, that's the way they're made, because they give you some lame excuse. And let me tell you something. In my opinion, this is the downfall of the file. The reason more people don't buy and use files is because these stupid tang arrangements that they have and always have had. You know, it started off, blacksmiths made files years ago, and because they didn't, when they were heat treating them, they couldn't put wood on or whatever, so they used to slap a piece of wood on afterwards and make the file. But there's no reason that every file couldn't have a handle like this. And if they did, if more of them made them like this, more companies, I guarantee that files would be much more popular. And, you know, but this tang arrangement has always been terrible. So what you need to do is, when you're going to use it, either you learn to use the file like this, you know, which a lot of us do. You know, you grab a file and you're not going to take time and slap a handle. So you learn how to grasp the file that it's not going to pierce you, and you use just enough pressure. But, or more often, you put a handle. Now, the basic file as we know it dates back to like 1864 when the machine files started coming out. And not long after that, people were coming out with better handles. You know, because they all knew that was a weakness of the file, is the handle. So they came out with different handles. This is a very popular handle from years ago, and it's what we're going to focus on today, is the antique handle that was casted and adjustable screw-on. But since then, they came out with trying to reproduce that type, but this is a general that's adjustable, and you can see that clamps down onto the tang. Or the rest of them, you just basically press into a hole in the bottom of the handle, and that will hold the file in. This is an antique one too, and you can see it's just basically a metal ferrule around a wooden handle. Believe it or not, some of the earliest and really good, I know this sounds crazy, but an old dried corn husk really does a great job as a handle. One of the earliest file handles. Great job. Non-slip, cheap, easily replaceable. These wire wrapped handles, again, you had to wrap or use a ferrule or something, because when you wedge the tang into the wood, it would tend to split the wood, so you had to have something to hold it to stop it from splitting and holding the file. This one here has been recent. A lot of people have been using this type of file handle, a regular golf ball. Let me show you how easy it is to make one of these. Now, very simply, to make one of these, just pick a file that you want to use, get a nut that fits over the tang about 3/4 of an inch up the tang. And I like to use a hard nut because it tends to bite in a little better. Then take a drill bit the same diameter as the flats of the nut. As you can see here, this is the same diameter here as the flats of this nut. And that will drill into the golf ball. Now, using your great-grandfather's vise, position the nut so it's over the hole, and just press it into that hole. And when it gets pressed in flat, like that, you're good to go. Just like that. And the last step is to take a smaller drill that'll fit in that hole. You see it passes through easily, and just drill out about another 3/4 of an inch so that the tang could fit in there. The last step is to just take your file, press it in, and give it a good turn when you're pressing it in. And once that's in there, that ain't coming. It's a solid handle. Real nice job. And basically that's it. Once the nut is pressed in there and you screw, it'll bite I use a hardened nut, but the nut will bite into the tang of the file. It doesn't come off. It's very strong, and it's very comfortable to use. So very good file handle. The other ones, you know, they're molded or whatnot, but let's get to why we're here. And this is one of the simple, elegant cast file handles that dates back to the late 1800s. And the problem with a lot of these is because, again, you wanted to get as much clamping force as you could. A lot of times they were bent. These little thumb screws would bend, as this one is. So let's go take one of these and fix it up and make it new. A few different makers made these handles throughout the years, and they all basically had very similar designs, and all it encompassed was a clamp that when the file was inserted into the handle like this, the little clamp, you would tighten down on the screw, the thumb screw, and that would pull the clamp against the little handle, and what would happen is it would, you know, give you a pretty solid purchase on there. But the problem is that, you know, if you're doing some heavy duty filing, again with the stupid tang, you would really want to crank down on that, because it would tend to rock a little bit if it wasn't the exact right tang size for this handle. And that's where you had a lot of these getting bent. Over the years, this one here is an earlier one. You can see not only is it a fine thread, but it's a pretty stout thumb screw. This one here it's you know, a cheaper thumb screw. Still a pretty fine thread, but it's, you know, it's pretty cheapy, you know, not a strong one. And this one here is the worst of all, and I don't even know if this is an aftermarket or if it's original, whatever. Now, I tried to remove this. The problem is from screwing down onto the, it mushroomed out the tip of the screw, so I can't get it out, but I want to straighten it out. Now, when I'm straightening this out, if this ever should break or anything, I'll be more than glad to get rid of this one and tap it up to the next size. There's enough meat there. Tap it to the next size and put in a finer thread. So let's straighten this out now. Well, that worked out really well, using a little bit of heat and not getting it red hot, just hot enough that we can bend it without any fear of cracking it. But we got this perfectly straight again. Put a little drop of lubrication, it is back to good, and very happy with that. Now let's talk real quick about, remember I was talking about, you know, I have a little bug up about flashing. Now, you can see here's 3 examples of 3 different file handles. This one is obviously the oldest because of the screw. But look here, you see the flashing over here, you see the flashing over here on both sides, you see? Now, you don't see any visible flashing on this one. And another point in cases, you see up here, you know, when they ground this one piece off, you see they just did a quick grind over there, and they left the casting marks on that side. The side looks, you know, that don't look good. That's raw casting right there. Same here. On this one here, this one's a little bit better, probably because it's worn, but you could still see that flash line. But, you know, it's a little better. But, again, that flash line. Now, look at the oldest one here. Look at that. They took the time to make sure that there's no casting marks or anything on there. That's the difference between manufacturers that took the extra time, especially back then when they wanted your money. You know, money was scarce, and they went the extra mile. And that's why whenever I try and restore it, I try and take off any of that. But let's go see what kind of finish we're going to put on this. Now, just so you know, up to this point, I had all intentions of painting it black. Okay, our post-wire brush evaluation. You can see what it looks like. Something tells me I might go a little bit nuts on this one. I got 3 of them. I got about 6 of them, actually. So this is the worst one I have. I might as well have fun with it. Now, when I first took it over to the belt sand, I was surprised at how stout and robust it was. So much so that I couldn't get all the casting marks off of with the belt sander. I had to take it back to the vise and file them off by hand. And then after that, I went back to the belt sander and finished it off with a finer grit. And then after that, obviously, it's time to paint it. Nice coat of red paint. Really would spruce it up. And then, well, you know my favorite part. Remember what it looked like before we started. And we're calling this project finished. I'm really happy with the way this came out. Just the way I was hoping that it would come out, with doing the inside red, which that took a little bit longer than I expected. There was all kinds of grind marks on the back, and it was uneven. We were able to get them all out, making it like nice and shiny. Remember, the clamp was casted without any addressing at the factory. We took care of that. It works really great now, as it should. And one thing I found interesting is there was a little maker stamp here, that E. Now, I don't know, I'll have to look up what that stands for, but that E is the only mark that's on here as far as who the manufacturer was. And we got rid of most of the casting marks. You don't see them. It's just a beautiful, feels so nice in the hand. And let me show you why this file handle is such a nice handle and how it works. Now, one thing nice about how these handles were made is that if you used a regular file like this, you would just slip it in here, tighten up on the clamp like this, and you had a very solid way to hold a flat file or half round file or any other type of file. Now, the other nice thing that a lot of people don't realize is because of that V groove that's cut both in the clamp and in the handle of the body, you could take a smaller file, slip it in here and choke up on it, and when you tighten this up, this is really, really solid. I mean, just a perfect way to hold smaller files. And you could run that all the way back to the back of the handle, so because of the hollow feature of this handle. So that's another feature for smaller files. Here we have a 20-inch half-round coarse file. That's an antique, and it's older than all of us. And you can see it fits on there very nicely. Has a nice contour to it. You can grab it and still be able to use it. Lastly, here we have a nice triangle file, and you can see how that seats in there. And it is really solid. I mean, this is such a great purchase on here. And to release it, just half a turn, comes right out. So in closing, if you can get your hands on one of these, you will not be sorry. It's a really nice little file handle. Still holds up after 100 years. It still is useful today as it was back then. And I appreciate you tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care. Have a nice day.